like myself, you're tired of all that noise, let's go ahead and soundproof an entire room. Now this won't be the cheap budget options, but these are the options that works very well in getting the job done. And by the time that you're done watching, you'll be quite satisfied in knowing what to do or what to tell your contractor to do. Now let's begin with the walls. Most interior walls are terrible at blocking sound. They're usually just 2 layers of drywall with some empty spacing in between them. Maybe a bit of lightweight insulation if you're lucky. That kind of setup might give you an STC rating around 30 to 35. And if you're not familiar with STC just means how well a wall blocks sound. At that level, you'll still hear conversations, TVs, traffic, and even low-end rumble coming right through. To actually stop that kind of noise, you need 4 things working together. Mass to block airborne noise, decoupling to stop vibrations from transferring through the structure, absorption to kill resonance inside the wall cavity, basically the insulation, and sealing, because even the tiniest gap can leak a surprising amount of sound. The first step to consider is decoupling. All decoupling means it's separating the drywall from the framing so the vibration doesn't transfer straight through. Without it, low frequency noise like footsteps, subwoofers, heavy machinery will pass right through the studs with very little reduction. Decoupling is most often used on ceilings because that's where impact noise from footsteps is the biggest problem, but it can also be used on walls, especially if you're dealing with low frequency rumbles where you can actually feel the vibrations. In those cases, breaking the direct connections between the surface can make a noticeable difference. Quick break from today's video. If you have no power, this is where the EcoFlow comes in because you can use it inside and you can keep going. You don't have to rely on a generator that has to be left outside. Now this EcoFlow is at 0%, and even if it's at 0%, you might be saying, well, that's useless if you have no power, but you can have solar panels, so you can charge it with solar panels. This is the world's #1 portable power station brand in sales, and it's honestly become my first choice for backup power whenever I am working somewhere, well, without an outlet. I can just plug my drill right into the EcoFlow Delta and keep going. No gas fumes, no noise, totally safe to use indoors or in the garage, unlike a gas generator. And the cool part with X Boost Tech, EcoFlow powers 99% of essential devices. Not just tools, but refrigerators, Wi-Fi, even CPAP machines if the grid goes down. And this is the time to grab one because you can save up to 59%, the lowest EcoFlow prices of the year, and if the prices drops within 30 days, you get a price match. Plus, use my code in the description below for an extra 5% off, excluding the flash sale power kits, Delta Pro Series, and accessories, until December 31st. I love that it's quiet, emissions-free, fast to recharge, 0 to 80% in under 60 minutes. And you can top it up from AC, solar, even EV charger. Basically, it's built for everyday and emergency use. So if you've been thinking about backup power, whether it's for storm season, working off grid, or just keeping your fridge running when the lights go out, now's the best time to grab one. Check the links below for the EcoFlow website and Amazon store while the Prime deal days are still on. And personally, I use it often enough when the power goes out. I've had it for a couple of years, and I find this small one also handy. This is the EcoFlow River 2. That I've had for a few years. Now back to the video. There's 3 main ways to decouple a wall. Option 1 is a double stud wall. This is the most effective method. You build 2 separate rows of studs with a 1-inch air gap between them. Each side of drywall attaches to its own set of studs, and the 2 walls never touches. The reason why this works is there's a complete structural break so the vibrations can't transfer across. And the people that should use it is anyone doing a major renovations where space isn't a concern. It takes up the most floor area, but it gives the best overall results. Option 2, staggered studs. Here you use a single top and bottom plate, but alternate the studs from front to back. One layer of drywall fastens to the front row, the other to the back row. Even though the studs share the same plates, the drywall layers don't really connect to the same studs. That separation will reduce the vibration transfers while keeping the wall slimmer than a full double stud build. And option 3, which is the one that you can do DIY, isolation clips or resilient channels. If you're working with an existing wall, you just have to remove the drywall before doing this. This is usually the most practical option. Isolation clips like Whisper clips or Isomax supports metal hat channel, which then holds the drywall. These clips adds flexibility that cuts down vibration transfers. Resilient channels are a cheaper version of the same idea, but they're easy to install wrong. If you fasten them directly into the stud even once, the whole system doesn't work. Clips cost more, but they're far more reliable. The reason why this works so good is the drywall is no longer fastened directly to the studs. Vibrations gets absorbed in the clips system before they even reach the drywall. And this is best used for people that wants to upgrade an existing wall where you don't want to, well, you do have to tear everything apart if you want to add the channels. But the thing is, if you're not dealing with any type of vibration, this whole entire step is not entirely necessary. Now, if you have an open wall, don't worry, we'll get to what you can do if you have a wall that you don't want to tear apart. That's coming up. But still, before adding your installation, you have to take care of your light switches and your electrical boxes, because most of them are just open plastic or metal boxes with wire holes in the back, and every one of those openings is basically a pathway for sound. That's where, well, I think I have one right here. Putty pad comes in. Well, this is just a little chunk of it. Putty pad is a flexible, fire-rated sheet of soundproofing material. Feels a lot like a thick moldable clay. You press it onto the outside of an electrical box, wrapping it completely so it seals the back, sides, and wire penetrations. What it does is it adds both mass and sealing right where you'd otherwise have thin, hollow gaps. Those boxes are weak points in almost every wall, and without treating them, you'll still get voices or TV noise bleeding through, even if the rest of the wall is built perfectly. They're also designed to stay flexible over time and to meet fire code, so you're not creating a hazard inside the wall. And they're surprisingly affordable, usually $7 a box. Well, not a box, each. Once it's sealed, then you can move on to filling the cavity with insulation. Not all insulation is created equal when it comes to blocking noise. The fluffy pink fiberglass you often see in walls or attic is designed primarily for thermal insulation, not sound control. It offers a minimal resistance to low frequency noise like bass and only slightly muffles higher frequencies such as voices. For a little bit more effective soundproofing, you need dense sound absorbing materials like mineral wool. Top choices include Rockwool Safe and Sound or Owen Corning's Thermofiber Ultrabat. No sponsorship. These products are engineered for acoustic performance with dense fibers that excels at trapping mid and high frequency sound waves. Plus, they're fire resistant, adding safety to your build. Insulation and soundproofing isn't about stopping noise entirely. That's the job of mass. Instead, it reduces resonance inside the wall cavity. When installing, fit the bats snugly but don't cram them in. Overcompressing reduces the material's fluffiness, which lowers its ability to trap sound energy. While mineral wool costs more than fiberglass, it's one of the more effective and budget-friendly ways to boost your wall's acoustic performance. Now that the insulation is in, it's time to add mass, and this is where the real sound blocking comes in. The best setup is to sandwich 2-pound mass-loaded vinyl between 2 layers of 5/8 of an inch drywall. Start by hanging your first sheet of 5/8 of an inch drywall onto the studs or channel system. Next, roll out the MLV directly over that drywall. cut it to size, fasten it with screws and washers, and make sure the seams are tight. Seal all the seams with acoustic seam tape. Then add the second layer of drywall right over top, staggering the seams from the first layer. What this does is combine rigid mass like drywall with a flexible, dense barrier, the mass-loaded vinyl. That layered system is far harder for sound to vibrate through than just drywall alone. Some of the mistakes to avoid while doing this is don't skip sealing the MLV seams. Even a small gap leaks sound. And don't use thin half-inch drywall. Always go with 5/8 of an inch. And don't try to substitute acoustic foam. They're not a noise blocking product. Once the sandwich layer is complete, you've just created the wall's main sound barrier. Next, you'll lock it in by sealing every edge and penetrations. You need everything to be sealed. This step might not feel as important as adding mass or insulation, but makes a huge difference. Here's why. Sound travels through the air, and even the smallest crack or gap will leak noise. And what to use for sealing these gaps is something called acoustic sealant, but I used to not really recommend them anymore because they kind of went up in price, but I did find one that is quite affordable. It's from Red Devil Caulking. I'll have links in the description below of everything I talk about in this video. And also there might be QR codes with the items, just to make it easier. But basically the difference between an acoustic caulking and regular $3 caulking would be that the acoustic sealant, it stays rubbery over time. So even if the door slams out of perhaps anger, then it won't crack. It'll just stay the way it is and sound will stay on the other side. All you do is you run a continuous bead along every edge of the wall, top, bottom, and both sides. Seal all inside corners. Seal around the outlets, light switches, and any pipe or wire penetrations. Smooth it with a caulking tool or just your finger to make sure it bonds tight with no gaps. One mistake to avoid is don't forget the bottom edge where the wall meets the floor. It's one of the most common leaks. Now, once this step is done, the wall is finally airtight, and when you combine sealing with mass, decoupling, and insulation, you've built a serious soundproof barrier. But what if you're not opening the wall and still want to soundproof it? Is there still a good way? Well, of course. In that case, you can build right on top of the existing drywall, and the process is basically the same as the latter steps we already covered. You're just starting with the first layer of drywall already in place. You take a full layer of 2 pounds MLV and fasten it directly to the wall, sealing every seam so it's airtight. Then you install a new layer of 5/8 of an inch drywall over the mass-loaded vinyl. Now, once this step is complete, you just do the same thing as you did with the other step. You take your acoustic caulking and you seal the gaps. You might have to take your baseboard off to seal that bottom gap. It's easy, you just put it back in. Now, of course, this approach won't reach the same level of performance as fully decoupled wall, since you're not isolating the structure or adding insulation inside the wall cavity, but it still does add a serious amount of mass, and mass is biggest factor for blocking especially airborne noise. For walls that are already built and needs a big upgrade, this is the way to do it. All right, before we wrap it up, acoustic panels. This is for echo, not soundproofing. So I want to clear up one of the biggest misconception I see all the time, and that's acoustic panels. Foam panels and fabric wrap panels are often sold as soundproofing, but they don't actually block sound from going through a wall. What they do is absorb reflections inside the room. That means they make the room itself sound quieter and less echoey, which is useful for things like recording, Zoom calls, or watching movies, but they won't stop your neighbor's TV or traffic noise from bleeding through the wall. But that doesn't mean they're useless. Acoustic treatment can make a huge difference in how the room sounds on the inside, and when you combine them with real soundproofing methods like mass, decoupling, insulation, sealing, you get both benefits, quieter room and a better sounding one as well. If your main problem is echo or a hollow sounding room, panels are a good add-on, but if your problem is more sound coming through the wall, don't expect these foams to fix anything. The first and biggest upgrade is the door itself. Most interior doors in homes like this one are hollow cores, and they're one of the worst offenders when it comes to sound leaking through. If you've ever cut one of these open, which I'm sure you have, you'll see why. Instead, it's not solid, it's just a thin wood frame with a honeycomb-shaped cardboard insert. That honeycomb is only there to kind of keep the door from collapsing in on itself. It doesn't really block that much noise. The outside skin of the door are only about 1/8 of an inch thick. All that adds up to is a door that weighs maybe 20 to 25 pounds, and that's pretty light. So think about it this way. A door that light might stop you from seeing inside a room, but it's not going to stop you from hearing into the room. But a solid core door, that's a little bit different. Solid core doors are built with dense materials from top to bottom, whether that's engineered wood or a solid hardwood door. Now these, instead of being 25 pounds, these weighs anywhere between 70 to over 100 pounds. That's 3 to 4 times heavier. Since a solid core door is much heavier than the hollow core, the hinges matter. Most of the time you can keep your existing frame as long as it's square and in good condition. But the standard hinges that comes with a hollow core door usually aren't strong enough to hold that extra weight. That's why it's important to upgrade to heavier duty hinges and use the right screws. Go with longer screws than the ones you're replacing so they bite deep into the framing behind the jamb. That way the door will stay aligned, won't sag over time, and will keep working the way it should. Step 2, well, seal the perimeter. Now that the door itself is solid, the next problem is gaps around the frame. Even the heaviest door won't block sound if it's not sealed properly. Here's a simple test. Turn off the lights in your room, leave the lights in the next room on, and close the door. If you see light bleeding through around the edges, that's exactly where the sound is slipping through. First, make sure the doorstop trim is snug against the frame so there aren't any loose spots. Once that's good, there are 3 main ways to seal around the door. First one is acoustic sealant. As a house shifts or the door frame expands and contracts with the seasons, this type of sealant won't crack or separate. Run a thin bead where the doorstop meets the frame to close up hairline cracks that you might not even notice. Second one is self-adhesive weather strip. This is the quick, easy option most people are familiar with. It's foam or rubber on a peel and stick backing, and you just press it into place on the frame. It can definitely help reduce air and sound leaks, but the downside is that it wears out. The foam can also flatten over time, and if the door doesn't close with enough pressure, you won't get a tight seal. It's better than nothing, but it's not what I'd call a long-term or high-performance solution. The third one is door seal kit. This is the professional grade option. These kits are made of metal strips with a built-in silicone or rubber gasket. They screw right into the frame, and when the door closes, the gasket compresses tight against the door. That gives you an airtight seal every single time, and unlike the stick-on foam, it doesn't wear down nearly as fast. You'll often see these used in studios, offices, or high-end soundproofing projects, but they're not that expensive, around $50. It's something that you can easily do yourself at home. What I would recommend is going with option 1 and 3. Seal the cracks with acoustic caulking and then add the proper door seal kit for the perimeter. Step 3, seal the bottom door gap. The bottom of the door is almost always the #1 weak spot, and there are 2 main ways to handle this. First one is a door sweep. This is the classic option. A U-shaped door sweep slides over the bottom edge of the door and has a rubber strip that presses against the floor or threshold. It's inexpensive, simple to install, and works well if your floor is fairly even. Another bonus is that they're easy to slip on and off if you don't want it there all the time. Second one is the automatic door seal. This is the upgrade option. Looks like a slim bar mounted at the top of the door, and inside it's got a mechanism that lowers a rubber seal straight down when you close the door. When you open the door, it retracts so it doesn't drag onto the floor. That means you always get a perfect seal and you don't wear out the bottom edges. It's clean, effective, and a lot more user-friendly than sweep if you're opening and closing the door a lot. Now here's something people always ask about. What about airflow? It's true that many rooms rely on that door gap for air circulation. If you completely seal it, the air can get a little stuffy. If that's a concern, you've got a couple of options. You can install a proper acoustic vent somewhere else, or keep it simple, go with the automatic door seal, or just leave the door open when you're not worried about soundproofing. And now you might be wondering, what exactly is an acoustic air vent? Well, these are special vents that let air pass through, but are designed in a way that blocks or bends sound so it doesn't travel straight through into the room. You could put one of these through the wall or even above the door if needed. Either way, don't ignore the bottom gap. It's the simple, most common reason people soundproof a door and still hear the noise. Step 4, add a soundproof door panel. This is the most practical way to give your door extra mass without layering heavy materials over the door and make it look like, crap. Soundproof panels are pre-made products designed to mount directly onto the door. They're made with dense materials like mass-loaded vinyl, fiberglass, or composite cores, all wrapped in a clean fabric finish. Some attaches permanently onto the doors with screws, or others you can just use Velcro or hooks. And the advantage is quite simple. You don't have to build anything. You just mount the panel and your door is instantly heavier and more resistant to sound. And if you choose a removable version, you can take it down whenever you want. I actually tested one of these door panels in a past video and it worked surprisingly well at blocking noise. Just keep in mind, don't confuse these panels with the $50 to $100 ones you see on Amazon. They're not the same things. Those are usually just fabric panels with a little bit of padding. They just don't have the dense soundproofing core inside. They'll help a little bit with echoes, but they won't block noise the way a proper soundproof door panel actually does. That's also why I recommend starting with a solid core door first. That alone will block far more noise than a hollow core door ever could. A soundproof panel is something you'd add if you need even more performance, or if you're in a rental and you can't really replace a door. And don't worry about mismatching doors. You can get a solid core replacement that looks identical to your old hollow door, so nobody will ever even notice the swap. You just have to, most of the time, paint it yourself. What I like about soundproofing a door is that there are so many ways to do it, and even very inexpensive ways works quite well. Now let's move on to the windows. Now let's begin with step 1, laminated acoustic glass, which is one of the top performing. Laminated acoustic glass is the best choice for blocking outside noise. It's made by bonding 2 panes of glass with a clear plastic layer called PVB. When sound waves hit the glass, that middle layer absorbs the vibrations and keeps it from entering the room. A single pane window usually has an SDC rating of 22 to 25. A properly installed laminated window can reach an SDC of up to 40 to 45, which can cut perceived noise by more than half. This upgrade is especially effective against mid and high frequency noise like traffic. Laminated glass do have other advantages. It's hard to break, and if it does break, it sticks together, all the shards, so it doesn't go everywhere. And it also blocks 95 to 90% of harmful UV rays, protecting your furniture and your flooring. And just to go back to SDC ratings is just a measure of noise. In the US, laminated acoustic glass panels alone typically cost between $10 and $20 per square foot. Because laminated glass is heavy and requires a precise seal, professional installation is highly recommended. An improper install can erase the soundproofing benefits altogether. If acoustic glass isn't for you, you can go with double or triple pane window. This is a good alternative. Double pane insulated windows use 2 panes separated by an air or argon gas gap. The extra pane and gap disrupts sound waves and provides noticeable better sound reduction than single pane windows, without jumping to the cost of laminated acoustic glass. Double pane units typically fall in the SDC 28 to 34 range. Triple pane windows add a third pane and gap, sometimes reaching STCs from 35 to 38. Triple pane option reduces noise and heat transfers even more, but comes with a higher weight and cost. In the US, double pane replacement generally costs between $400 to $1,000 per install. And triple pane windows cost even more than that. So if your budget allows it, go with triple. If you only have single pane windows, jumping from single to double, you'll see quite a noticeable difference. And if you don't want to change the window at all, let's say you're renting or you just don't want to go through the hassle, you want something more DIY, you can use an acoustic window panel. I did try one of these a few years ago. This one was from Indo Windows, and one thing that is clear with this is that I noticed that it works very well if you just have a single pane window. However, if you have a double or triple pane window, I would probably skip this one altogether because the amount of noise it stopped was noticeably less than just a single pane window. Now, these window panels are custom made and they are not cheap. What they do is they send you a measurement kit. You measure the window frame and you send them back the measurements. They send you the window panel and you install it. What's nice with these is you can bring it with you if you move out, if you have especially a window that's a standard size. And this window panel is surrounded by a thick rubber gasket which seals all around perfectly. This window panel insert, you can't buy it on Amazon. I'll leave a link for that website. It's called Indo Windows. A little bit more pricey, but if you have a problem and you're renting, this is the way to go. Once all that is done, lock down every gap around the window. Upgrading glass or adding an insert is only part of the job. Noise will still find its way if there's cracks around the frame or sash. First, you need to find the leak. What you do is wait for a breezy day and move your hand slowly around the inside edges of the window. Feel for any drafts or cool spots. That's a noise path. You can also use a match or candle test. Hold a small flame close to the edge and watch it if it moves or wavers. If it does, air is sneaking through. Seal the inside by removing any loose interior trim or quarter round and look for spaces between the frame and the wall. Fill those seams with acoustic sealant, not regular caulking. Smooth it out, let it cure, and then reinstall your trim so everything looks clean. And if you didn't need to remove the trim, even better yet, just go around it. Next, check under the window where it opens. If it's one of those types of windows, check the gasket of the window. Is it sealing? Is it pitted? If it's damaged, then it is a good time to change it. Replace that seal and you'll notice that the breezy air cool is no longer coming in. Once all that is done, if all you've done is seal the gaps, what you can do is build your own DIY window panel. This is one of the most effective upgrades you can make without touching the actual window. It's to create a removable sound panel that covers the entire window opening. This is not just fabric or a thin blanket. It's a dense, rigid panel that gives your window the kind of mass a wall basically has. The way it works is simple. You're building a solid barrier using drywall, MDF for weight, and mineral wool and fiberglass for insulation to absorb the sound vibration, and mass-loaded vinyl sandwiched in for even more density. When those layers are bonded together and pressed firmly over the window frame, they create a serious block against outside noise. The beauty of this approach is that it's removable. Add weather stripping or foam tape around the edges so the panel seals against the wall or trim. When you want sunlight or fresh air, I guess, you can lift it out. You can wrap the front in fabric or paint it to match the decor. And if you want to build one of these, it'll typically cost you between $100 and $150 if you have none of these material. This is perfect if you're working night shift and you have to sleep during the day. This not only cuts the sound, but it makes your room pitch black. Next one is don't be fooled by soundproof curtains. You'll see plenty of products online called soundproof or sound blocking curtains, but here's the truth. They don't actually block noise. These curtains are great for absorbing echoes inside a room which makes a space sound quieter to the person inside, but they don't actually block noise from outside. They don't really have the density or the mass to block those sound waves. Barely noticeable compared to what solid window upgrades and inserts can do. A sound deadening curtain is more of an add-on. If you have the insert, if you have the new window and you just want to reduce it or deaden the noise by just a little bit, then add those curtains. However, if you've done all that work, the curtains is not going to make a huge difference. You're not going to notice that much. Now that you know that soundproofing a window is quite doable, let's move on to the ceiling slash floor. This is not the easiest thing to soundproof, but it is doable. You just need to know what to do. If you can hear your annoying neighbor upstairs, or maybe they're not annoying, you just hear their footsteps, voice bleeding through the ceiling upstairs, I'll show you the best way to soundproof a ceiling. It's not the cheapest, but it's the methods that actually work. Well, if you're only dealing with voices, add mass. If you're dealing with thumping noise, add, well, step 1, which is isolation clips and hat channels. Instead of fastening drywall directly to the joist, where every vibration from above transfers straight into your ceiling, you're creating a flexible break that forces those vibrations to die out before they reach the drywall. First, the isolation clips fasten to the floor joist above. These clips have a small rubber or spring component that absorbs some of the movement. Next, thin metal hat channels snap into the clips. When you attach your new drywall, you screw it into the channel, not the joist. The rubber element in each clip flexes slightly as footsteps or furniture moves from upstairs, and the metal channel spreads whatever vibrations are left. The result is that a lot less sound energy is reaching your ceiling. This setup is a big step up from simply adding insulation or a second layer of drywall. The clip and hat channel system breaks the direct link that carries impact noise, and it gives you a strong base for adding mass later to handle airborne noise. So if you skip this step and you're dealing with impact noise, even if you add 3 layers of drywall, you're not going to be satisfied. Next, add mineral wool between the joist. While you still got the ceiling open, this is the perfect time to add mineral wool insulation between the joists. It's also easy to cut to fit snugly between the joists without leaving any gaps. And in the US, expect to pay between $50 to $70 per bag, and a typical ceiling in an average size room might need 2 to 3 bags depending on spacing. Now it's time to give your ceiling the weight it needs to block airborne noise. And the most effective way to do this is to install 2 layers of 5/8 of an inch drywall on the hat channel. A single sheet of drywall offers some resistance, but doubling up dramatically increases the mass, making it much harder for sound waves to pass through. When hanging the first layer, leave a small gap, about 1/4 of an inch, at the perimeter where the drywall meets the wall. After the second layer is installed, fill that gap with acoustic sealant. This flexible sealant keeps air and sound from slipping through the edges as your home shifts over time. And for the second layer, stagger the seam so they don't line up with the first. This breaks up any straight path that sound could follow through both layers. Use drywall screws long enough to go through both layers and into the metal channel securely, but never screw into the joist. Because you're doubling the drywall, you're adding considerable weight. A typical 5x8 sheet of 5/8 of an inch drywall weighs about 70 pounds, so 2 layers on a medium-sized ceiling can add several hundred pounds. Hat channels and isolation clips are designed and tested to handle that load, but only if you're using the correct 25 gauge channel. Now, if you want to squeeze every bit of performance out of your ceiling soundproofing, add mass-loaded vinyl or MLV between your 2 layers of drywall. And once the MLV is in place and taped, hang the second layer of drywall directly over it and screw it into the hat channel. In the US, a good quality MLV usually costs $2 to $3 per square foot. It's not cheap, but in a tough situation where you need the best performance, like under a noisy neighbor or a dedicated home theater, MLV can provide those extra decibels of noise reduction that makes the difference. Next, deal with the electrical box and recessed lighting. Wrap each of these box and fixtures with putty pad. And finally, look at flanking paths, places where noise can bypass your ceiling entirely. Ductwork, plumbing, wall cavities, or gaps around beams can all carry sound from upstairs into your room. Use acoustic caulking, additional blocking, or flexible duct connectors to close off or isolate these paths. And by sealing all those gaps, you will notice a big difference. It is essential. So what do you think? Do you think these tips are actually doable for you? If you found value in this video, I usually don't ask this, but go ahead and leave a like. It really helps push this video above the ones giving out bad information. And those videos are getting a ton of views and convincing people to waste money on stuff that doesn't work. And if you don't have a question, just leave a comment anyway. Even just a thanks helps more than you think. And if you want to reduce sound even more and your budget is a little bit higher, video right here will show you how to do it. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, assuming you subscribed.